My stepkids told me I had no say in the house I paid for. That was the moment the mask slipped. The moment I realized I had spent over a decade building a family that was never truly mine. When Rebecca left, she didn't just abandon her children. She abandoned me too. I was 40 then, a man still believing in vows, in permanence, in the weight of promises. She walked out with nothing but a suitcase and the smugness of someone who thought freedom was more valuable than duty. The kids, Emily and Josh, were left standing in the wreckage, and I made a choice that night. I stayed. I stayed when I could have walked. I stayed when no one would have blamed me for cutting ties. I worked 2 jobs some months just to keep the mortgage current, to keep them in their schools, to make sure they never felt the cold edge of their mother's abandonment. Birthdays, graduations, tears at night when they whispered if she'd ever come back. I carried it all. I remember the first Christmas without her. Emily was 12, Josh barely 10. The house felt hollow, the tree standing like a skeleton dressed in fake light. They were trying to smile for me, to act like the absence didn't tear through the walls. But when Emily opened her gift, an art set I had saved weeks of overtime for, she burst into tears. Not because she didn't like it, but because she said, "Mom always helped me paint on Christmas morning. Now she's gone." And what did I do? I swallowed my own anger, my own bitterness, and sat with her. I dipped brushes into the colors, let her guide my clumsy hand across the canvas, and pretended I was enough. That was the pattern of those years. Me pretending to be enough while silently knowing I was just patching holes in a sinking ship. Still, I never faltered. I paid for braces, school trips, music lessons. I drove them to soccer games, waited in parking lots while Emily had choir practice, helped Josh build his first science project even though my own job demanded everything from me. I showed up to every parent-teacher conference, the only adult sitting there, fielding questions about their future, assuring the teachers they had stability even though I often doubted it myself. Rebecca's name was never far from their lips, though. I would hear them whisper on the phone with friends, "Yeah, my mom left. No, I don't know if she's coming back." And each time I wanted to scream that she didn't deserve their loyalty, that she had chosen a different life. But I never said it. I wanted them to keep some version of her in their hearts, because I thought children deserved that. Years blurred into a rhythm of sacrifice. Every raise at work went into tuition funds. Every tax return vanished into repairs for the house or summer camps. I didn't date, didn't travel, didn't live beyond the orbit of their needs. My friends told me I was *ling myself for kids who weren't even mine by blood. But I waved them off. I thought love was stronger than blood. And then came the milestones, the first car, the first prom, the first college acceptance letter. I stood in every photograph like a shadow, smiling, holding, supporting. Emily hugged me after her high school graduation and whispered, "Thank you for being here when she wasn't." That moment kept me alive through all the quiet humiliations. Because there were humiliations, though I rarely admitted them out loud. The time Josh muttered, "You're not my real dad," when I grounded him for sneaking out. The way Emily would sometimes talk about how Mom always said, as if her mother's ghost had more authority than my living presence. The way Rebecca's side of the family would send cards addressed only to the kids, never acknowledging me at all. Still, I pressed forward. I thought consistency would matter more than biology, that my name etched into the foundation of their lives would someday outweigh the absence of hers. I told myself that one day they'd look back and understand who had truly raised them. Then the wedding came. Emily's wedding. The culmination of years of sacrifice. A day I thought would finally cement my place as the man who had never left her side. I had helped pay for the venue, coordinated with the caterers, even covered the down payment on her dress because she wanted something she couldn't afford. I thought this day would be a celebration not just of her new marriage, but of the bond we had built in the ruins her mother left behind. But fate is cruel, because Rebecca came back. She arrived at the rehearsal dinner, wearing a dress too young for her age, her arm looped through the elbow of a man named Tom. He was loud, confident, the kind of man who wore his real estate smile like armor. She introduced him as her husband, though the kids had barely known him 2 years. And suddenly I was invisible. Rebecca swept into the room as if she had never vanished. She kissed Emily's cheek, embraced Josh, and laughed like a queen reclaiming her throne. Tom clapped me on the back, calling himself another stepdad in the club as though we were equals, though I had given my life to this family while he was just another salesman circling fresh prey. He told stories, their stories, as if he'd earned the right. He gave Emily advice about marriage, about fatherhood for Josh someday, about family values. I sat there, stunned. My jaw clenched so tight it ached, while Rebecca nodded proudly at him. And the kids? They smiled. They listened. They let him hold the floor. At one point, Tom raised his glass and said, "Family is about being there when it counts." My hands shook under the table. Being there when it counts? I had been there for every scraped knee, every late-night fever, every moment of doubt and fear. He had been around for birthdays and vacations, nothing more. Yet no one corrected him. Rebecca, who had vanished for a decade, acted as though nothing had happened, as though she had simply stepped out for a moment and returned to her rightful place. She posed for photographs beside Emily in her gown, while I stood at the edge of the crowd, holding my camera like a stranger. And in that moment, I realized something bone-deep and undeniable. All my years of sacrifice had been built on a foundation of sand. With a single reappearance, she could rewrite the story. With a single speech, Tom could position himself as the father figure. And me? I was just the man who had kept the lights on. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I replayed every sacrifice, every humiliation, every whispered thank you, and every muttered "you're not my real dad." And for the first time, I wondered if I had wasted my life on a family that never truly saw me. After the wedding, I tried to tell myself the worst was over. Rebecca had made her grand return. Tom had played the part of the charming intruder, and yet Emily had still hugged me at the end of the night and said she loved me. I clung to that. I told myself the noise would fade, that Tom was a passing storm and I would still be the one she leaned on when life became difficult. Then Emily announced she was pregnant. It was at Sunday dinner. I had cooked her favorite lasagna, layered with more cheese than was reasonable because she'd asked to come over. She sat at the table glowing, her fingers brushing the edge of her water glass like she was steadying herself. Then she said it, "I'm going to have a baby." For a moment, the years melted away. I saw the little girl who had once asked me to braid her doll's hair, the teenager who cried on my shoulder after her first heartbreak, the young woman who had walked down the aisle with hope in her eyes. A baby meant continuity. It meant I would become a grandfather, even if not by blood. I felt my chest swell with something close to pride. She smiled at me through nervous tears and whispered, "I want you there when he's born. I want you in the delivery room." I don't think she understood what those words meant to me. They were redemption, proof that the years hadn't been wasted, that she saw me not just as a man who paid bills but as her father in every way that mattered. I nodded, unable to speak, because if I did, the dam inside me would have broken. For weeks, I lived in that fragile joy. I helped her plan, talked through her fears, even began setting aside money to buy the crib and stroller she wanted. I researched pediatricians, toured baby stores, let myself believe I was building a future that included me. But then, slowly, the shift began. First, it was small. Emily mentioned that Tom had gone with her to look at nursery furniture. "He's good at picking things," she said. Then she added, almost casually, "He offered to cover the dresser and changing table." I brushed it off. One piece of furniture meant nothing. I was still the one she had asked into the delivery room. Then Tom started accompanying her to doctor's appointments. "He knows a lot about hospitals," she said. "It's nice having someone experienced there." My throat tightened when she said it, but I let it slide. Soon, Tom was the one arranging things. He found the pediatrician. He bought the car seat. He started handling the expenses I had always assumed would be mine to shoulder. And each time, Emily's words chipped away at me. "Tom's been so helpful. Tom's taking care of it. Tom's already covered that." I told myself it didn't matter, that money was never the point. But inside, I felt myself being erased one purchase at a time. The final blow came 2 weeks before the due date. Emily invited me to her house. She sat me down, her hands folded over her swollen belly, and she didn't meet my eyes. "Mark," she began softly, "I need to talk to you about the birth." I leaned forward, already sensing the knife before she twisted it. "Tom will be in the room with me. He's been so supportive through this whole process, and we just think it makes sense. He'll be the one to hold the baby first." The words echoed in my skull. Tom. Not me. Tom, who had known her for barely 2 years. Tom, who had walked into this family like a conquering hero while I had built it brick by brick with my bare hands. Tom would hold the child I had waited for, the grandchild I had dreamed of, before I even saw his face. I stared at her, searching for some sign she didn't mean it, that she was just confused, overwhelmed, hormonal. But she only whispered, "You'll still be part of his life. I don't want conflict. This feels simpler." Simpler. That was the word she used to dismiss me. Simpler to cut me out. I left her house that night in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard I thought it would snap. Years of sacrifice, years of loyalty, years of standing in the gap when her mother vanished. All dismissed in the name of simplicity. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. Something colder took root in me. A clarity I had only tasted once before, when Rebecca walked out and I decided to stay. This time, the decision was different. If Tom wanted to be the father, then Tom could be the father. If Emily believed he had earned the right to stand in the room where life began, then he could also stand in the room where responsibility crushed down. The next morning, I called the furniture store where I had placed deposits. I canceled every order. I called the hospital billing department and removed my card from Emily's account. I redirected every expense, every bill, every payment to Tom. From that day forward, I was done. I stopped answering calls from Emily when she wanted advice. When she texted asking if I could still watch the dog while she was in the hospital, I didn't reply. When she asked if I could cover her last ultrasound, I forwarded her Tom's number. Everything, every privilege, every responsibility was now his problem. Word spread quickly through the family. Josh called me angry. He accused me of abandoning them, of being petty. But then he said the words that sealed my decision forever. "We only listened to our blood parents anyway." That was it. The mask slipped completely. That night, I drove home and changed the locks. Every bill that carried my name was canceled. The cell phone lines I paid for, gone. The streaming accounts shut down. The utilities transferred to Tom. I packed what little of Emily and Josh's belongings still lingered in my house and stacked them by the door. Then I called their father and told him to pick them up. When they arrived, no one argued. Not Emily, not Josh, not even Rebecca. They all stood in silence as I handed over the keys, as if they knew some unspoken truth had finally come due. I had given them everything: time, money, love, patience. And when it mattered, they gave me nothing but dismissal. So I gave them the one thing they had always insisted I wasn't: freedom from me. When I cut them off, it wasn't rage that guided me. Rage is hot, quick, messy. What I felt was colder than that. An iciness that settled in my bones like winter. A clarity so sharp it sliced through the fog of years. For more than a decade, I had carried a burden that was never mine to bear. I had filled shoes abandoned by someone who chose absence over duty. And in return, I was told I had no authority, no claim, no place. Fine. If they wanted a world without me, then I would give it to them completely. The first wave hit quickly. The crib Emily had chosen, the stroller she said she loved, the bassinet that was already on order, all canceled. The hospital fees she had assumed I would handle were no longer on my accounts. Every call from a billing department, every invoice, every form redirected to Tom. His name, his problem. At first, they didn't notice. Tom boasted at family gatherings about how he was stepping up, about how providing for a child was what a real man does. He puffed out his chest, told long-winded stories about responsibility, and Rebecca beamed at him as if she were finally vindicated for her decade of absence. I stayed quiet. I let him bask. But responsibility has a way of revealing cracks. The bills piled up fast. Baby furniture, prenatal appointments, medications, groceries, one by one, the costs stacked higher than Tom's smile could stretch. The man who thought he was buying his way into fatherhood discovered that fatherhood is less about the big speeches and more about the relentless grind of provision. And grind he did, at least until the weight began to crush him. Emily called me one evening, her voice trembling. She said the utility company was threatening shut-off notices. I calmly told her those accounts were no longer in my name. She paused, as if waiting for me to add that I'd fix it anyway. But I didn't. I told her she'd need to talk to Tom. Another time, Josh showed up at my house unannounced, angry. His fists clenched, his words spit like bullets. "You abandoned us. You're supposed to be there. That's what family means." I stared at him, unflinching. "Family means respect. And you told me yourself you only listen to your blood parents. So that's where your loyalty lies. Go to them." He faltered then, for the first time looking smaller than the boy I had raised. But he said nothing more. He turned and left. The unraveling came quickly after that. Tom tried to cover the expenses with his commissions, but real estate doesn't pay reliably. Some months were dry, and the hospital bills didn't care. Creditors began calling. Rebecca pawned jewelry, sold off pieces of furniture, but the debts grew faster than their efforts. And through it all, I remained still. Neighbors whispered about how the happy facade was slipping. The car that once gleamed in the driveway was repossessed. Emily, glowing with pregnancy only months earlier, now looked hollow, her face tight with worry. Yet pride, or perhaps desperation, kept them from admitting what they had lost. The final fracture came from my stepsons' own mouths. When I pressed them, asking if they truly believed I was nothing after all the years I had given them, they repeated it with cruel clarity. "We only listened to our blood parents." That was the moment the last cord snapped. That night, I went through the house and severed every remaining tie. The locks were changed. Every account I controlled, phone plans, streaming services, insurance policies, canceled or stripped of their names. Privileges they never thanked me for vanished like mist. I piled their belongings neatly, not in anger but in finality, and I made the call to their father. "They're ready to be picked up," I said. When he arrived, they stood silent, their eyes darting anywhere but mine. Rebecca hovered in the background, her lips pressed tight, Tom sulking beside her like a man already sensing his crown slipping. No one argued, no one pleaded, no one dared. I opened the door, pointed to the boxes, and said only this: "You wanted freedom from me. Now you have it. Every part of it." Josh muttered under his breath. Emily kept her gaze fixed on the floor, and Rebecca busied herself with empty chatter, pretending control. Tom said nothing at all, his jaw clenched, his posture rigid with humiliation. And just like that, they were gone. The house was silent afterward. For the first time in years, I sat in a living room free of obligation. No mess left for me to clean, no debt dragging at my ankles, no disrespect burning my ears. My own, mine alone. But freedom is not joy. It is emptiness. And in that emptiness, the echoes of their betrayal grew louder. For weeks I held firm. I let the weight of their choices bear down on them without interference. I watched from a distance as the life they had chosen with Tom cracked apart, as Rebecca's triumphant return soured into desperation, as the children I had once called mine learned what it meant to be truly on their own. Each call that came to me, each message begging for help, went unanswered. If they had chosen to cut me out of the story, then I would not write myself back in. And so the dominoes fell one by one. Rebecca's marriage began to fracture under the strain. Tom, once boastful and confident, grew bitter, snapping at Emily, distancing himself from the very responsibilities he had so loudly claimed. Josh, once defiant, started skipping classes, the weight of instability pressing into his young adulthood. Emily, nearing motherhood, faced the reality of her choices with sleepless nights and unanswered bills. I heard it all through whispers, through fragments, through the grapevine that never truly disappears in families. But I did not step in. Not yet. They wanted a world without me. And now they had to live in it. The silence that followed was heavier than noise. For weeks after I cut them off, my house felt like a mausoleum. Quiet, ordered, and devoid of the chaos that had once filled every corner. No slammed doors, no muttered insults, no demands on my wallet or my patience. It was peace, but it was the kind of peace that comes after a battlefield has been cleared, when the smoke still clings to the air and you're left wondering what pieces of yourself you left behind. I told myself I didn't care, that I had drawn the line and they had chosen their side. That Tom, with all his speeches about responsibility and his posturing as a father figure, would now face the reality of what fatherhood truly cost. And reality came swiftly. Within a month, the cracks widened into gaping holes. Bills went unpaid. Creditors began calling the house Emily and Tom shared, their voices hard and unyielding. Rebecca, who had reappeared with a smile as if she'd never abandoned them, grew more desperate by the day. I heard she tried to borrow money from friends, even from her estranged relatives who barely remembered her existence. Pride kept her from coming to me directly, but desperation gnawed at the edges of her composure. Tom, the savior she had paraded in front of everyone, began to crumble. The commissions from real estate dried up when the market dipped, and suddenly his swagger turned to bitterness. He snapped at Emily, grew short-tempered with Rebecca, and started avoiding the very responsibilities he had once claimed so loudly. The man who promised to be there when it counts began vanishing in the moments that counted most. Emily, meanwhile, carried the weight of it all. Her pregnancy advanced, her body heavy with strain, while her eyes dimmed with the exhaustion of trying to hold everything together. She had once looked at me with trust, with the expectation that I would always find a way to fix things. Now she had no one left to lean on. And then, one evening, it came, the envelope. It was slid under my front door sometime after dusk. No knock, no sound of footsteps retreating. Just a plain white envelope with my name written in Emily's familiar handwriting. My chest tightened before I even opened it. Inside was a single photograph. A newborn baby, swaddled in hospital blankets, eyes closed, his tiny fists clenched in the fragile defiance of life. My grandson, though the word felt both rightful and forbidden at the same time. Folded behind the photograph was a letter, written in hurried script, streaked with the faint marks of tears. Mark, it began. I don't know how to say this without admitting everything I tried to avoid. I was wrong. I thought I could build a future without you, that I could rewrite my family without facing the truth of who was really there for me. Tom was supposed to be strong. He was supposed to carry the weight. But he's gone. He left the hospital before we were even discharged. He said he couldn't handle the pressure, the bills, the responsibility. He walked out on me, on us, just like Mom did all those years ago. I stopped reading for a moment, my hands trembling. I knew how betrayal tasted. I knew the bitterness of watching someone vanish when you needed them most. My throat tightened with something that was not satisfaction, but something darker. Recognition. The letter continued. I told you I didn't need you, but that was pride talking. I see now that everything you did, the years you stayed, the sacrifices you made, the money you spent, the time you gave, it wasn't just obligation. It was love. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. I'm sorry for pushing you aside. I'm sorry for letting Tom take your place. Please, if you can find it in your heart, meet your grandson. He deserves to know the man who raised his mother when no one else would. I sat in silence for a long time, the letter trembling in my grip, the photograph burning into my eyes, the anger I had carried for years, the cold armor I had built around myself. It all cracked in that moment, not because the betrayal was undone, but because the cycle had repeated. Just as Rebecca had abandoned her children, Tom had abandoned mine. And Emily, caught in the wreckage, had finally seen the truth I had lived all along. I met my grandson 2 weeks later. It wasn't some cinematic reunion filled with warm embraces and tears that washed away the past. It was quieter, rawer. Emily opened the door with dark circles under her eyes, her body still fragile from childbirth, the baby cradled against her chest. She looked at me as though she didn't deserve to, her lips parting but no words coming out. I stepped inside, my gaze fixed on the child. He was so small, so vulnerable, his breathing soft and steady in the way only newborns breathe. Emily held him out to me with trembling arms. "Do you want to hold him?" she whispered. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to refuse, to make her live in the choices she had made. But another part, the part that had spent years patching holes and carrying burdens, reached forward almost instinctively. The moment I held him, something shifted. His warmth seeped into me, and for the first time in years, I felt something untainted by betrayal. He knew nothing of history, of abandonment, of stepfathers and impostors. He only knew need, and I had always answered need, even when it wasn't mine to answer. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she watched. "I don't expect you to forgive me overnight," she whispered. "But I know I can't do this alone, and I don't want to lose you again." I looked at her, then at the child in my arms. My voice was steady, colder than it once would have been. "I will be here for him, but understand this, I will not be erased again. If I give my time, my energy, my love, it will be with respect. Without it, I walk away for good." She nodded through her tears, and in that nod I saw not only apology but also recognition. Finally, recognition of who I had been all along. As for Tom, he vanished as quickly as he had appeared. He left debts behind, creditors chasing shadows, and Rebecca once again stranded with nothing but excuses. History has a cruel habit of repeating itself. I don't know if I will ever fully forgive Emily. Betrayal leaves scars too deep for complete healing. But I hold my grandson now, and in his eyes I see a chance to write something new, not to erase the past, but to build a future that acknowledges it. Still, at night, when the house is quiet, I wonder, was it my fault for staying too long? For giving too much? For believing that love and sacrifice could outweigh blood and absence? I don't know. So I ask you, the ones listening, the ones weighing judgment in silence. Was I wrong to step away when they erased me? Or was it the only way to show them what my presence truly meant?